So the other day, Isaiah and I were training at a local LA Fitness, and we started to have a conversation about what it feels like to be an elite athlete. And this kind of stems from a conversation that we had on the podcast the other day. We were talking about elite sprinters and what it felt like to run 10 seconds or 980 in the 100-meter dash, because obviously most of us can't run 980 in the 100-meter dash. We don't know what it feels like. And I can't jump 50 inches off 2 feet. So I don't know what it feels like. I've never done that. And I can't even simulate it because my muscles can't generate that much tension. My tendons probably aren't the same as his. And I want to know what it feels like, because it's oftentimes easier to lean into a sensation than it is to follow a visual or audible cue, right? Like we could use an audible cue, like our ears. We could use so that would be like speaking to someone. You could use a tactile cue, which is like touching someone on their back or their shoulder, or, squeeze your abs, that type of thing. Or you could use a visual cue, like if Isaiah watches me demonstrate something and he tries to copy it. Obviously, he could try his best, but he might not feel the same things that I do. So what I wanted to do was talk about this with him, because again, and all of us listening to this do not have 50.5-inch verticals. So we don't know actually what it feels like to test or to jump that high off 2 feet specifically. I can tell you what it feels like to jump 42 inches as like 175 pound, 6'1" or 6 foot white male, but I don't know what it's like to jump 50.5 inches as a 6'2" male. And I want to know what that's like. So you told me prior to the podcast, because I was kind of prying, what it well, I basically asked you, what does it feel like when you jump 50.5, or what does it feel like when you jump good versus bad?
Yeah. So when I jump well, it feels like a bouncy ball, like one of those super bouncy balls, and you're throwing it against concrete. You're throwing it really hard, and it's even more so like imagine there was a ramp. You throw it really hard at the ramp, so it's going straight, and then boom, and it bounces straight up. That is what it feels like. And then my bad days feel like goo. It feels like
Like your
I
muscles feel like goo, or your quads, or your hips? What does it feel like in the like?
um it's more so like I have to try. Feels like I'm really heavy. Uh I would say, yeah, my quads, like my muscles feel very soft, if that makes sense, or like sore even. Versus when I have good jumping days, everything feels really hard. All right. The guy don't smile. Why are you smiling, John? Not
No,
funny.
no reason, no reason. Anyways,
But everything just feels really hard. Like my tendons, my muscles, like it almost feels like a really hard unit. Like literally like my whole body just becomes a
so
bouncy
is
ball.
it like when you flex in a mirror? Like I can flex in a mirror and my muscles feel
Yes.
quote unquote
Like,
hard.
now
Yeah,
imagine
like
just
I can.
throwing this at the ground. Bah! Like
Yeah, but that's the thing. Can you emulate that? Like, is that what you try to do, or is it just, does it
so
happen? Like, could you tell yourself,
you want me to
I'm
give
gonna
the
try?
analogy? The analogy or no?
Yeah, dude, this is okay. If you're not at least 15 years old, or you're actually, if your parents are in the car or whatever, we're going to use a funny analogy, and it's maybe a little bit appropriate. So you should probably just shut it off here or skip ahead like 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just anatomy though.
All right. Anyways,
So
go ahead. We're gonna talk about wieners.
yeah. If you make sure you've gone through puberty and that your parents have had the puberty talk with you at this point. Okay. So sometimes your wee wee gets hard, right? So the
Okay.
analogy I gave is I can try really hard and make my wee wee hard, but on a bad day, there's only a certain level of hardness it's gonna get to. Versus good days, it can get way harder with less
Way
effort.
stiffer.
Yeah,
You're like
way
rock
stiffer
solid. You're like
with
this. You're like,
yep, with way less effort. And I'm talking output
so when you
wise,
say you're horny to jump,
there could
you
be
literally
some
mean
yeah,
you're
there could
horny
be
to
some
jump.
no, but output wise, it could be the difference between jumping 47 and 51, right? 4 inches, 10% of my vertical. Effort wise, like
4 inches, huh?
like activating my brain and telling myself like intent wise, it's like if 100% is my best day, on bad days, it's like it feels like I'm at 70% in terms of neural output. Like I'm like trying to wait. You know what I was just reading about that makes this all make sense? You know the size
I,
principle?
I'm. What are we talking about right now?
You know the
Size
size principle?
principle.
So what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah,
comparing
yeah,
this
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
is on good days, I can be with very little neural effort. Like it feels like I'm freaking
Like
recruiting
you
all my
recruit all
muscle
big
fibers.
motor units.
Yeah, yeah. Versus when on bad days, it feels like I'm not recruit. Like it's like I'm
You're
at
as hard as
70%.
you try. You can try as hard as you can, but you're never going to recruit those big, big, big motor units
Yeah,
that you
yeah,
want to
yeah.
recruit. Like you have
Yep,
like a governor, a central governor on,
yep. And
and you just
I
can't
saw
get
this
there.
chart on a study. I forgot what research study that I was given. I know we're about to piss people off. As soon as we start mentioning studies, they're like, "Oh, you guys are retards."
Science, idiots.
No, but
You have no business.
I
You are
was
not a
looking at
scientist.
this chart, and they were basically showing like it was like how big the motor units, or it was like which motor units were recruited by which neurons, and it was like a neuron, or not a motor unit. It was like a motor unit and how many fibers each motor neuron was
Yeah, like your
innervating.
hands versus your quad.
Yeah, yeah. And when it got to like the last two motor units, they were innervating like most of the freaking type 2X muscle fibers. And it reminds me of like what a bad jumping day is. It's like I'm trying really freaking hard, but I have all these muscle fibers that I'm not recruiting right now.
But you're still
But
getting 47 inches, 48 inches. So like you're gonna tell me
yeah.
that you're missing 50% of your motor units? Like that doesn't really
Well,
sound accurate.
that's why it's weird because I feel like the difference between, a bad day and I feel like it feels like I'm only at 70% output wise
But in
versus
reality, you're testing 47, 48.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
But
Like it doesn't
it feels like you're testing 30.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's actually fascinating. So, and it's crazy because at 47 inches, you could do anything still. You still have access to all your dunks. It's kind of
Well,
crazy.
what's interesting though is
You do
and
miss more.
we've seen this, yeah, like, bro, I had back in 2016, 17, 18, like right before I met you or when I first started working with you, my max vertical ever was 46, probably average in the 44 range. Actually, no, no, no. My best vertical ever was 44,
Yeah, I was
and I
gonna say,
probably
I was like,
averaged in the 42 range.
yeah,
And I've
yeah.
had jumping days during that time where I dunked way better when I'm feeling good and I'm jumping 44, right? I was feeling electric and I was jumping 44, way better dunking wise and technique wise than bad days now jumping 47. On a bad day now, like my hands are horrible. Like I can't
Yeah.
transfer it properly. My spins are off. Like I'll hit like
Do you
weird
think it's that
angles.
you're not like hitting or using as much of your vertical on those dunks versus just like jump height is more simplistic as a
Nah,
motor
no,
pattern?
no. And I know that just from watching the videos. Like I'm like seeing
So
how
you
high
look
I'm
at the
jumping.
flight times, you look how close your head to the how close your head is to the rim. You're watching all
Yeah,
that stuff and you're just missing everything.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
you're like, I have no business missing these dunks, but I just can't put it together.
Yep. And anytime, it doesn't matter if I was 16 or 27 now, the electric days, it's like my technique gets really good. The only exception to that rule, I would say, is one, if I haven't been practicing dunking a lot, obviously the skill is gonna get worse. Then there's always a correlation between that. And then sometimes I take so much caffeine and I'm so amped that like I have good jumping days and not good hands days, but definitely affects my dunk technique. Like when I'm neurally wiped.
So I'm gonna pull a Steven. I'm gonna pull a Steven. And I'll never forget this. One time we were at dunk camp. It was like the first time I ever met Steven. And he was asking me questions. And I was like, yeah, like trying to explain general concepts. And he goes, okay, okay, okay. But back to me, back to me. Like, so you're listening to this and you're thinking, okay, okay, back to me, back to me. We're gonna take it back to the people that have a 30-inch vertical, right? And what they feel versus what you feel. So do you think that what it feels like on your 50.5 inch or 51-inch days, if we're assuming that you probably hit higher than that, but maybe we weren't testing or whatever, like on the height check at dunk camp. Do you feel like the sensations you got at 50.5 are exactly the same sensations that you had on your good days at like when you had your best day was a 42 or 43? Do the sensations that you had on the 43-inch day feel the same as the sensations
It's
you had on 50.5?
I think I mentioned this yesterday when we were talking about it. My good days have always felt the same. They've
Interesting.
always felt the same. I remember I was 18. I could actually pull this dunk session up. I was can you pause? Can you pause the video? Because I actually want to show this.
Well, I actually have many questions for you while you do this. Can you
Okay,
multitask
okay.
while you do this or no?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
I'll be able
so
to.
what about when you had like a 37 or 36-inch like vertical? Your best was a 36 or 37. That the sensations that you had with the 36 or 37 in terms of what it feels like, did it feel exactly the same as what having a 50.5, like a good day with a 50.5-inch
The
vertical feels like?
only the only time it changed, I think, was when my technique wasn't as good. So, when I had, like, a short penultimate and my approach wasn't super fast, those days felt different. But I'm actually gonna pull 2 sessions out. These are sessions that
Because most of the
I've
people listening don't have even a 45 and a 40-inch vertical. Most of the people are probably in that like low to mid 30s, I would assume. I mean,
yeah.
some people probably do have higher verticals, but
Okay,
like,
okay. So this is actually really interesting that you say that, John. There was a time where it changed. There was definitely a time where it changed
ooh, I'm fascinated to hear this. And this is the
when
cover. This is the crossover for people that I want them to kind of realize.
and I'm gonna pull up probably like when I was jumping 30-ish. What a good dunk day was around then.
Because the goal is for you guys to understand and replicate the sensations. Because if you replicate the sensations, you're going to jump higher because that means that you're probably getting a lot of force in the 10 or energy force. They're related via work, as per
Yeah.
my physics friend Isaiah has many times elaborated on. Shout out David Castro, his beautiful mind, beautiful physics
So
mind.
this right here. So I was jumping around
Can you full screen this?
36. Yeah. So I could probably jump around 36 inches here. So it's like pretty decent. I can
Show
dunk.
like pause it on the penultimate. Like, oh wow. So
Yeah,
you're
like
kind of just looking directly at the ball,
stutter stepping,
but your timing
right?
is good. Like your timing is good.
Yeah. And mind you, I was dunking a lot. Like this is probably the highest dunk frequency I had in my whole life.
That's
Um,
crazy. That's 10 feet.
yeah, this is 10 feet.
That's crazy.
And it was like it's not bad, right? But there was just things like on the approach, like it's a little bit mistimed. I'm
So was this your best
decelerating.
day at the time?
Yeah, this is my best day ever. Like
So
I
this is
had
your
this day
best
and I
day
was
ever.
like,
Like you remember thinking to yourself, like, wow,
I
I'm
just
way
went
better than
off.
I once was.
Yeah, I just went off. Like I'm about to I had never dunked off the dribble with two hands here. I was trying 360s like on 10. Like this is stuff I came into this session. This lob I still remember because I had caught it behind me and I still made it. I was like, whoa, like that was my best one-hander ever at the time.
Do you think how did you measure the hoop? Do we know for sure it was 10?
Yeah, I would measure it before every dunk session, make sure it's 10. So that dunk day, right?
Okay, so you think you have a 37-inch vertical is your best day ever.
This is probably 36,
You
35, 36.
36. You're doing two-handers. You
Yeah.
punched a one-hander. You how tall are you at this point?
5'11.
5'11". You still got the long gangly arms. You're like a
Yeah.
young me. You're like built like me in this
Yeah.
video.
Yeah, literally.
Welcome to my
Literally.
world. Welcome to my world, Isaiah. You remember those days? Anyways, okay, so this is I mean, what's weird is I watch this and I'm like, that's a 37? I'm like, what? That looks like when I'm jumping like 35.
Yeah.
But that's kind
It
of weird.
might be
That's just the difference
35.
between 2
What
feet.
let me see what the time frame. I actually think I had just tested a 34-inch vertical a little bit prior to that.
First
Where
windmill
w
on 9.6. Look at that.
Right here, yep. Vertical jump. This is my vertical jump test that summer. Oh, yeah, yeah. 30 so I had a
Your
34-inch
reach is almost identical to me. That is crazy. That's hilarious. So you're probably jumping a little higher. So that day we might have been 35, 36.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you're jumping 35, 36. That's
Yeah.
crazy. That would be wow, dude. Well, I should be way better at dunking than I am. This is embarrassing. No offense.
Yeah. So that
That's
day
actually crazy.
I was jumping 35, 35, 36. How I would describe that, it's not as much the bouncy ball, it's more like I can put more force into the ground.
Like you push harder in a quarter
Yeah.
squat type of feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't related to speed. I didn't have the bouncy ball feeling. It was just
Was it
more
almost
like
like a depth jump, like kind of hopping into it and just pushing really hard, or
yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's like a slow depth, like the one where you get into the half squat and then
take your
like
time and just push as hard as you can?
push. Yeah. And like
But you
some
just
days,
felt like you had access to more of the pushing power.
yeah. I feel like my output was really high that day.
Like if
Then
you were punching something, you just felt and you were like literally your hand was on the bag, you could just push harder on that bag and push more weight. Literally almost like a squat.
it wasn't even a punch. It's more like a shove. Like I can like grab and like shove something way harder,
Was
right?
it
Like
but with your legs? So is it similar to a squat? Like you get to a
yeah,
half squat and you take your
yeah,
time and you can just stand up faster out of a half
yeah.
squat?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. This is good. This is good. So it just felt
So
like you had access to more pushing power at that
yeah.
time.
So then fast forward 2 months, I figure
Do you
out
have
my
the
penultimate.
session up or do you need to pause it?
I'm not gonna show this session because it wasn't like a crazy day, but there was one session where I went from, if you saw that approach, I like was stutter, like I was basically taking a bunch of steps because I saw somewhere like run faster. And in my head, I thought I was running faster. I was literally just
That's
taking
what
more
Dallin
steps
says.
and
Run
then
faster, jump higher.
slowing down on the penultimate step. I had a session where it was like an epiphany, and I was like, let me just take 4 steps. And I just took 4 steps from the same distance around the 3-point line. It forced me to have a long penultimate, and then I flew, right? Hit my first windmill.
On 10
Then,
feet.
yeah, on 10 feet.
Do you have that? Pause this video. I want to see it. I want to personally see it.
Yeah. Let me
I can pause it if you need me
yeah,
to.
yeah, you pause it. You pause it.
Okay, so we have the video up. Let's see what this looks like. I'm curious to see what this is gonna. Oh wow! Look at the
So
hype. So
so
let's reframe
remember
my
the
frame. Let
other
me see.
approach. Like
I
compare
know what it. Yeah, I've got a visual
this is 2
represent
months
mental
later.
mapping.
Look how many steps I took.
1, 2. Wow. So you
And I
really just
actually built
yeah.
acceleration, right? 1 step, took the second step.
Yeah, you got like that forward lean, you're
Still
low,
shorted the
kick,
penultimate a little
drive the
bit.
knee a little bit, but it's way better than it was.
Yeah.
Like before your knee didn't even get past 90 degrees. Like
Yeah.
your knee was glued at 90
Yep.
degrees, meaning like you could see a right angle between your thigh and your knee.
By the way, these are Hirachi free runs that I'm wearing.
Yeah, if you guys ever want to go back and get yourself a 50-inch vertical, it's key. And look, you drive the
And
knee well,
yep.
time up the block foot.
Yeah. So first windmill, just the timing got way better. From there, basketball season started.
Do we
Uh
want to pause again
jump,
or do you just want to you got
no,
it
no,
up?
no. Jumped a lot. Like jumped a lot, a lot, a lot. Uh
And did you maintain that penultimate step? Like you
yep.
started that
It
4
got
step?
better. It got better. So over the
So
course
you
of the
kept
basketball
you stayed the
season,
course,
yeah.
maintained that approach,
Yep.
go across the basketball season.
Yep. Stuck to a 4-step approach the whole season. It's actually part of the reason I think I had trouble dunking in games because I practiced that specific 4-step approach so much. I didn't know how to dunk off anything else. Then I believe this is in February right here. Yep. So this is February. So basketball season ends.
And you're a junior at this point?
I'm a senior. Senior
You're a
year.
senior? That's you as a senior?
Yep. Yep.
Bro, that's what I looked like as a freshman in high school. That is fascinating. No offense. That's crazy though.
Yeah. So basketball season ends, take some time off. Then I add steps to my approach. Okay.
So wait,
This is
make
the
this full
first
screen. Make
session.
this full screen. I need to see this. Make this full
This is
screen.
the first
I'm
session where you want to hear the music or no?
no, 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 no.
So
I'm just fascinated on what you're about to say.
so I added steps. I still remember this day so vividly. It felt like I was flying and I felt like a bouncy ball. This is the first time in my
So
life.
this is that sensation that you had on 50.5, or this
Yeah.
is the first day you had your
Yep.
50.5 sensation.
Yep. Rim was 910, I believe.
Is Bam Bam or Jamwell filming? Oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah. So now I'm doing a full 5-step approach, long ass penultimate. Feels like I'm throwing myself into the ground. Uh Feel that electric feeling that I always mentioned. Like I hit my first reverse pump here. Like running fast as hell, able to convert all the speed. Here I'm practicing dunking on a fast break, by the way.
You were really short penultimate step there.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's good. Yeah, you can tell. You know what's
Yeah.
crazy? How far you have to start your penultimate step from where the ball bounces. Like people don't realize that. I
Yep.
mean, you can tell you short it whenever you can tell because when you jump worse and short it,
Yeah.
you start it way closer to the ball.
Yeah. But
Holy crap, dude.
bro, this session, I literally still remember it to this day.
That's
Like,
beautiful.
yeah. And it feels like this session, remember the one we had, I don't even have to show this the other session, but this is also like one of my best sessions ever. But that
Like
day,
same exact sensation as a 50.5 inch
bro, the
day.
LA Fitness day last week, it felt just like these days. Like I get
Just crazy electric,
yeah,
bouncy, super bouncy ball. You get that. Okay, so let me ask you this, because this is
yeah,
always fascinating to me, right? Everyone's got different nervous systems. Everyone's different type of athletes. Everyone's got different genetic predispositions and experiences. So
yeah,
you can't falsify that feeling by trying to. I'm going to give you a hypothetical. I'm running into my approach, right? Feel this loose, relaxed sensation. And then I get, probably like a stride out from my penultimate step. And I'm thinking, okay, I got to push hard as hell on this left foot when it hits the
yeah,
ground, right? I'm about to drive my knee as hard as I can, throw my arms back as hard as I can, and push back as hard as I can. Okay. Big, long stride, long contact with the ground. And I'm about to get ready to hit the ground with my plant foot. I can't artificially contract my quads like I'm flexing in a mirror, or like stiffen my muscles like I'm flexing in a mirror, or like I'm, like you said, you're like, it feels like, yeah, like feels like this, like I'm flexing my muscles. You can't artificially do that and jump higher. It's more so like it doesn't give you the same sensation of that super springiness. All you're thinking to get that stiffness or like that flexing your muscle sensation is pushing. It's happening as a result or product of you pushing, not a product of you trying to flex your muscles mid-flight of the penultimate step.
yeah. Yep.
What if you tried to do that? What if you were like, I'm gonna stiffen my muscles and I'm gonna like squeeze my legs and squeeze my abs and try to get like really
I mean,
stiff prior to hitting the ground?
that's kind of what happens on the bad days when I try like that try harder thing, and it works. I think it does work and it helps me make you jump higher, but you're not gonna jump as high as your best days ever on a bad day by trying harder.
So if
Like,
I'm so would you recommend to me off 2 foot in mid-flight of my penultimate stride to like literally squeeze my muscles as hard as I can prior to pushing on the ground, or just think like push as hard as you can?
I think just push as hard as you can. I think as soon as you start getting into contract
Because
this
that
much
what I'm saying is
harder,
like pre-contracting, like artificially pre-contracting is what I'm
yeah.
suggesting.
I think what could work is like bracing, like your core, like when I
Just
think,
because you can push harder.
yeah, when I think like squeeze, I think of my core. Like if I squeeze my core while doing a movement, like it feels like everything happens more quicker, like more quick,
More
faster,
explosively.
harder. Like
So would
yeah,
you recommend like on those good days, you're not trying to brace. It's just happening, obviously, I'm assuming.
yeah,
But on the days where you have to try hard and it's a bad day, you're like, okay, I'm gonna brace and push as hard as I can.
yeah.
What about if you're 50.5 and you're going for 51? Do you brace on those ones and you're
Try.
trying harder?
There's times where I try, but bro, it's worked
Does it
like
make it worse? Does it make it
it's worked.
worse or does it
It's
just
made
make
it
it the
worse
same?
90% of the time. But the one time it worked, I had my highest jump ever. So
That's fascinating.
yeah.
Hmm.
It's just really I think when you're pushing the limits like that, there's so much margin, like room for error. Like you could miscue something and then something else gets thrown off. Like there,
Yeah, it's like I said this the other day about business, but it's like unintended consequences. You
yeah,
don't know what the unintended consequences of you trying that new QR. And
Yeah.
I think that's kind of one of the things that I've learned the most this year about coaching, specifically with Fabian, because high jump is really kind of a delicate beast, and it's still jumping high, but the unintended consequences of things that you do could have lasting impacts on that athlete's long-term development, and you have to be very careful not to, quote unquote, fuck them up. If I have him jump when he's fatigued, it's not going to go well. He's going to build bad habits, and he's going to
Yeah.
get worse over time. So with
My
you,
lens
I haven't
on
had to deal with that quite as much. Most of
my
the time,
lens
the unintended consequences are good.
yeah. My lens on that has changed a lot. Now it's more so due to injury, but I don't see a point in pushing
Bad dunk sessions.
bad dunk sessions. Yeah,
What
like
about, do
trying
you
to
think if you would have been as good if you would have done that when you were younger?
I don't I don't know. There's an argument for it. There's a strong argument for it. I think dunk technique wise, you can improve, but I don't think you're a better jumper by forcing, like, when you get to that point in a dunk session where your
It's
bounce
just
just
going the other
leaves.
direction. It's just not
Bro,
beneficial anymore.
I used to force a session probably like an hour and a half more past that point. Sometimes like
So
2
my
hours
thing,
past that point.
yeah, my thing is wondering exactly that, is when you're doing that, because the intramuscular forces are so high, and we looked at the forces, like, we know objectively that your forces are not very high when you're in a 2-foot jump, you know?
Yeah,
I don't know about during amortization because we didn't have it synchronized with video footage. Maybe it is.
yeah.
But the peak forces are not that high. They're really not. And you're still getting massive jumps. So what that tells me is the force plate is not lying, but it's lying, because I asked you this. I said, okay, you had 500 newtons at peak force, right? Or sorry, it was 500
20
pound feet,
2000.
pounds or whatever of force.
Oh yeah, the foot force or something like that, or
I don't
pound
know what it
force,
was. Anyways, the
or
newtons,
pound force.
pounds force, yeah, but
LBF.
the newtons, LBF, but the newtons were 2024. Is that what it was?
22224. 22224.
22224. Okay, so 2,224.
Yeah.
And we looked at high jumpers, and high jumpers get 7,000 newtons at peak force. But my question is for you, and on your landing, you had what, almost 5,000 newtons of force?
No, it was like 5,500, 5,400.
So 5,400. Which one felt more intense on your muscles? 2,000 newton,
The
2,200 newtons,
2,000.
or
It's
5,000
not even
newtons?
close. 2,000. I can go and do 50-inch drops all day
And you'll hit 5,000 newtons, but they
each
are
time.
not.
It's not
And
gonna
this
do
is
anything.
really interesting. This is why I always think sensations are so important, because if you look at a force plate, the force plate will not tell you. It lies to you. It lies to you. You
Yeah.
cannot just look at a force plate and look at the forces and say, "Oh, well, peak forces are really high, therefore blah 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 blah."
Or the
Like,
TPVs too. Like, remember when we were doing the squat jumps, and then I did one where I like shorted it, and it was
yeah,
way higher. Like the TPV was like actually specific, and then the
Isaiah
peak
goes, "Oh,
wattage
I did
was
a jump.
higher.
I did a jump at 30." It was like,
Yeah, it was like a torque jump. It was like a torque jump. Like I
and
like
the
just like
TPV
put my butt
was
in it.
200 milliseconds or something, 250.
It was like 3,200, but I had been in like the 400 millisecond range.
You're saying it was 320 milliseconds versus 400
Yeah,
milliseconds for
yeah,
TPV, right?
yeah.
But the peak force, or sorry, not peak force, the wattages were super low. You know what's crazy? I actually find that when you look at power, it can be more telling in terms of the sensations in the muscle, right?
Yeah.
Because I think if I were to do, I don't know if I would 100% stand behind that statement, but just off the top of my head, it almost feels like that. That's not always true. But like, if you think
Yeah,
about your highest wattage activities. So
it's the
technically,
trap bar deadlift. Is a trap the 315 trap bar deadlift.
this is the craziest muscle sensations you've had, right?
Yeah.
But
Felt
like
nothing.
but like if you look at a force plate and you look at the watt or the newtons, just peak force, which oftentimes people use peak force because it correlates very strongly with other metrics, right? It's really hard to have super high peak force on a propulsive jump and not have a really big force time curve, meaning big impulse and change in momentum. So people just look at that and they use it to explain everything. And they're like, oh, yeah, blah, 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 blah. But to me, it's always been intramuscular tension. And I've explained this to you. That's how I tend to view things. I don't view it as like just force
Yeah.
because of leverages impacting things. If I'm in a deep squat, I might only get 500 newtons on the ground or whatever, right? But the tension in the muscle is really, really high because you're in this leveraged, disadvantaged position, leveragely disadvantaged position, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And
Poorly leveraged.
poorly leveraged position, yes. So I could do quarter squats and I could have way higher peak forces, but the intramuscular forces don't feel near the same as a deep squat. And some people would say, oh, well, that's like the difference between a muscular effort and a connective tissue or like bone-based effort. And in some regards, I agree. Like, I think there's probably a delicate balance between those two things that give you different sensations and kind of different results. Like, I would think, like, for me personally, and this is just me using my own experience, I don't know if this is necessarily backed in research or whatever, but I feel my tendons the most on stiffness hops, depth jumps. Well, okay, so the more I bend the joint and the higher I fall from and the more I push, the more I will feel it in the connective tissue, meaning my tendon. So, like, if I keep my knees stiff, but my ankles angulate a lot, I'll have really short ground contact times, but I'm going to feel it in my Achilles a shit ton. Now, if I just go for like basically peak height every single time, I feel the most tension in my patella and my Achilles. If I'm doing quarter squats, slow versus fast, I'm going to feel it way more in my patella on that scenario. If I'm doing deep squats, I'm probably going to feel it, and it's really, really heavy. At the sticking point, I'll start to feel it in my tendon a lot, but mostly it's the muscles. That's mostly where I feel it. Same thing with hip thrusts, like really, really heavy hip thrusts, I'm going to feel it in my hips. If I go really, really fast, I probably on a hip thrust, I haven't really tried that. I'd probably mess up my back or something, but I probably wouldn't feel that. If I'm really light loads going really fast on like a seated calf raise or kind of bouncing, it's almost like the bouncier it feels, I can, okay, that's not necessarily true. If I try to balance with really heavy weights, I will borderline tear my Achilles. That's why I don't do it. I always keep it very, 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 very slow. And I'd rather do plyos or something else. Like, if I were to try to bounce with 500, 600 pounds like you do, I think I would tear my shit and I couldn't do it. So, I don't know. I think sensations are telling because if you understand some, and I don't understand kinetics or kinematics. Shout out Sweaty Adams. Or who else is the other one? Anon always says, you guys don't know anything about physics. You guys are idiots. So I have a PhD in physics. So you're right. I'm sorry. I don't have a PhD in physics, but I do my best to understand it to help myself and my athletes. And I have a general understanding of physics, at least I would say based on the Hemingway writer, I have like an 8th grade physics level. Maybe, no. Hemingway said,
no, you're like 12th grade.
14th grade. He said 14th grade. That's what he said. That's what Hemingway said. 14th grade. I have a 14th grade reading level. So yeah, that's what I thought. Anyways. And yeah, I haven't taken calc. I'll give you that. But I understand some of the aspects of it. And the tension that I would assume that when I feel a lot of tension in an area, that probably means there's a lot of force or energy going through it. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that, in general, that can be telling for the viewers.
Tension, if you look at
We have
Hooke's
no,
law, F equals negative kx. So tension is basically how stiff something is, and then how far you're stretching it. So if you're stretching, a muscle, the harder you contract it, the stiffer it is. And then if you're stretching it or contracting it a lot, there's going to be a ton of energy going through it, a lot of force that's going through it.
And mechanoreceptors are how we receive that information. That's how we sense the muscle tension and muscle deformations. They're found muscles, tendons, joints, and that is proprioception. That is how we know what is happening in our body, those mechanoreceptors. And I think what happens is when those mechanoreceptors are sensing more, we're going to feel more, and they're measuring. It is your internal tensiometer. It is measuring tension for you. And that's why I was curious on what it felt like for you, because if you're jumping 47 inches, you should be sensing more. But it's interesting in that, and it's probably bias, I would assume, right? But you feel the same.
It's probably due to, I was having a conversation with Ben last night.
What?
He mentioned.
Wait.
This is a private text message. Private text message.
You guys removed me from the coaching this is
No. This is only me and
absolutely
Ben. This is
obnoxious.
only me and Ben.
That's what I'm saying. You decided to have this conversation without the other coaches. That's not
But
fair. I think we all deserve to learn.
he mentioned one of the things we talked about was Golgi tendon organ inhibition, and then Crenshaw cell inhibition, the ones in your spine.
Yeah.
That basically,
Interneurons.
they can like decrease the output, or with more inhibition, it'll decrease motor output. But
Well, here's the thing.
what
Those
if
can actually
the reason it
decrease
feels?
the antagonist as well and help you.
You said
Here's a
what?
thought. Those can actually decrease tension in the antagonist through reciprocal
Oh, which would be
inhibition.
bad.
No. That's good. You want
Oh, or
to
decrease antagonist. Yeah, I thought
Yeah,
you
so that
meant
allows your
full
agonist to
contraction.
function better.
Yeah.
Which when Ben
Yeah.
talks about that, I'm like, dude, this is kind of like sometimes he says things and I'm like, damn, that's really, and then I hear it, I'm like, actually, no, this is very simplistic. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that line of thought.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But
go ahead.
what if it feels the same because there's less inhibition? Like I was always at there's like a capacity, right, of because a lot of it's sensation. It's like what am I actually feeling? And before it was the
You're saying on
max
good days, it feels the
intensity.
same.
Yeah,
You're saying it feels
max.
the
I
same
was
on
using
good days.
100% of that. But now there's like way less inhibition and stuff like that. I'm still at the same like neural outputs and
You're
like
saying your nervous system is still relatively the same, but
yeah,
your
yeah.
muscles,
And I think there's
like the
probably
sum of the parts are greater than the whole.
yeah, or another an analogy is like when you buy a really fast car, you get used to it, right? I had a rest in peace, a Hellcat Durango back in the day, and
Yeah,
I remember
RIP.
when I first got into that car, it was the most ridiculous thing I had ever felt in my life. It was disgusting, right? Disgustingly fast. And
That's how I feel about your car now.
it got to the point where I could drive that car. Don't ask me how I know. And this is all fiction. What
In
I'm about to
Mexico.
say.
In
Yeah.
Mexico. It's not even
No, this is
real.
all
It didn't even
fiction. This is
happen.
all fiction. This is a fantasy story that I'm
Yeah, this
saying,
is a fantasy story in
But
Mexico, hypothetically.
it got to the point where I could drive that thing to its absolute limit, like friggin' having a conversation, you know what I mean? Like sipping a drink. And because I got used to it. So I think that jumping is probably similar like that. Like I've jumped 47 so many times at this point that my brain probably is like that's like a baseline like level of performance. And then the really good days is the same percentage higher compared to the bad days as when I was jumping 42 versus the 39, right? Like it's like the same.
That's what I'm
Like
saying. Like
yeah,
you've created you've desensitized yourself to
yeah,
that height such
yeah.
that it's the novelty that feels the same.
Versus, you know what would be interesting is like if you put my brain into my brain at like 16 into my body now and had a bad jumping day, what if I was
What
like
would that 16-year-old you think?
I'm like
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
even on
That's
a
what I'm
bad day, would it
asking.
be like the tension now you're experiencing all the crazy tension? Like,
Yeah.
is it something
No,
changed
that's
there?
literally what I'm asking. Is like if I'm a person with a 33-inch vertical and I'm
Yeah,
trying to replicate this, does it feel the same for me when I have a good day? And have
yeah.
you experienced things that I have never experienced because I've never felt what it's like to have a peak
That's
force of
so weird.
2,200 newtons in my
That would
leg
be
during a lot of flexion?
bro, that would be
That's my
interesting. Like
question.
imagine you went on a bad day, not a good day. If all of a
But I was
sudden
in your body.
you just were in my body. You woke up, it's that movie, Freaky Friday or whatever.
Yeah,
Back in the
yeah,
day.
we switch
We switch,
bodies.
but it's a bad day. Like I'm like sick.
Yeah.
My max vertical is
And I'm
47.
like, wow, I have a sore throat. But then I go in and I go to jump and I'm like, dude, what the hell? Like, what does this feel?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, this must be what it feels like to have a 47-inch vertical. And then you switch back and I try as hard as I can. And I'm like, dude, it just doesn't, I just don't get the same oomph.
I'd be interested.
Like,
What if you know what would be crazy is if you go and then it feels horrible still. Like you're like having to like, oh, like
yeah, I'm like, oh my God, this feels sore and achy.
it's
But yeah, I'm
taking a lot
jumping
to get
high, but like,
going,
I just
but
want to stop. I don't think I would do
I'm
that. I think it'd
jumping
be,
real high.
no, dude, I think it would feel like what my dreams feel like. That's what I wondered because sprinters all run fast the same way, but jumpers don't all jump high the same way.
That
So
is really interesting. So at the
so if
top
you're a
level, there's
sprinter,
no differences in technique.
it feels the same. It feels the
Oh, and
same.
sensation, and
The
sensation.
sensations are the same at the same speeds.
Yeah.
There's only one way to run fast. There's only one way to run 11 meters per second. That's decreasing ground contact time, increasing the force, the ground reaction force, having sharper peaks, rounding the curve off better so that you're getting more elastic collisions, and having a very high stride frequency. That's the only way that you're able to get really, really high velocities on the ground. And women versus men running 10 meters per second, a man running 10 meters per second does it the same exact way as a woman running 10 meters per second. Yeah, if you normalize for height, like height will change things and stiffness numbers in terms of the absolutes will change. But when you look at it relative to their height, relative to their limb length, and then you look at the speed, it's the same, right? The stiffness is relatively the same.
Yeah.
But when you have a 36-inch vertical off 2 feet, when I have a 36-inch vertical off 2 feet versus when you had a 36-inch vertical off 2 feet, it won't feel the same. It won't feel
Yeah.
the same because you can get a 36-inch vertical a lot of different ways.
I think it's because the ground
And
contact times are so much higher.
exactly, you need to have shorter ground contact times to run fast. You can't run fast without short ground contact times, but you can jump high with long or short ground contact times. So
As we saw when we did the little
yeah,
analysis thing.
exactly. So yeah, I think it's interesting. What I learned here is that despite my best efforts, the Too Long didn't want to listen to this. Too Long didn't listen. TLDL is if you want to try to replicate the feelings that Isaiah gets by squeezing all your muscles and getting rock hard, like he said, artificially, it will not yield the same results as Isaiah. What you need to do is try to be a better athlete, be more forceful, change your biological system,
Get
and
good technique.
practice that skill, get good technique, and practice that skill
And you
with
saw
maximal
the
effort.
before and after. My technique wasn't always good.
You know, it's crazy how that reinforced good technique so quickly. Like some people would have just, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I've seen it so many times. We talked about it. There's that one athlete that never listens to anything I say, and it makes it hard for me to respect him. And it's like a disdain that I have because and we also talked about this the other day, how you guys only hear me in the lens of my expertise of coaching. So it probably comes off as arrogant as fuck, but it's only because A, I care. B, I've spent my entire life's work doing this and C, I'm trying to help these people and genuinely want the best for them. And if you do the same thing, you'll get the same result. If you do the same thing over and over and over again, you're going to get the same result. If you go golf and you never change your swing or you don't even try to change your swing, you're going to get the same result over and over and over again. You're not just going to magically figure it out. I think a lot of people think that's what happens. You have to try to do something differently to get a different result. And you have to practice that and constantly be learning and attempting that. So when I'm explaining this, again, you're hearing me as Coach John. Coach John is an asshole, a narcissistic asshole who isn't wrong because that's to your best benefit. That is to your benefit. like, but that is not me as a person. That is just me in my role. That is like
It's
the
actually a
character.
perfect description of you. You got Coach John,
You
narcissistic
got Coach
asshole, and
John,
then
who's a
good John.
narcissistic asshole, and then
Good
you
John,
have
that's
like
my coach.
me as a human being. But I had to learn how to be that person to be an effective tool,
To be
right?
fair, if you look at damn near any good coach, they're assholes.
You got to be a narcissistic asshole, dude. You have to be. Like if you're and that's not always the case, but I do think a lot of the times regardless of what it is that you're doing, dude, Jeff Bezos, you know, another good way is to view it in terms of your interpersonal relationships, right? John as a partner, John as a friend, John as a, you know, business partner or whatever else, like that's not the same person. But inside the boundaries of the weight room, yes, I have to be an asshole because you're not going to listen to me if there's any doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
And that might sound crazy to you, but it's very true. When you step on the floor, and this was taught to me by Mike, is you need to have the world's biggest balls, like fake it to make it. You have to defend your turf. You have to be confident because people don't listen to you, right? I would love to sit down and be the kindest individual. Like that's my true nature, but that's not going to be an effective tool, right? If I'm trying to hammer in a nail, that hammer better be steel. It better be hard, right? But if I use a rubberized soft hammer, right? That's not going to be a very effective tool for hammering that nail. And the same thing's true of coaching. If you want to be an effective coach, you have to play that character. You have to be that character. It's almost like when you watch a TV show. Like Paris Hilton did it for years, dude. Paris Hilton wasn't really stupid, blonde, pretty girl, oblivious. Like that's the
Yeah.
character she played because she was the most effective tool for her goals. And the same thing's true of coaching. Like in business, when we talk sometimes, Isaiah is very stern and harsh, but that's good because that's an effective tool. So I just want to say that because Isaiah and I were talking about that the other day, and I'm like, these people don't like see me outside of this very
Bubble.
small, isolated bubble, right? You guys get a very filtered lens of me, which is interesting. But anyways, yeah, I feel like this is a good place to stop. We had a lot of good conversation here, and yeah, I hope that was really helpful for you guys. We are super appreciative of everything that you guys do. We love you guys, and if you are currently on our coaching, thank you for trusting us with your training, with your biology, physiology, and your health. We take it very seriously, and we are doing our absolute best every day to make you a better athlete. If you're interested in getting coaching from us and you want to be a part of that cohort, it's a very special place and we love it. Go to THPstrength.com and sign up. THP stands for Translating Human Performance. Ciao. Au revoir. Bye bye.